You wouldn't know by looking at them. They laugh at your jokes, show up to work, post selfies. But inside, there's a war going on. And sometimes, the only way they know how to survive is in silence, even when that silence hurts. We tend to think of self-harm as a cry for help, but for most people who do it, it's not a cry. It's a secret. It's quiet, hidden, timed carefully, covered with sleeves or with smiles. Behind that silence, there's often something darker, self-hate. Not just disliking yourself, but believing deep down that you're fundamentally flawed, that you're too much, or not enough, or both somehow, at once. Where does that belief come from? Why do some people turn pain inward, even physically? And maybe most importantly, how do we begin to unlearn it? Self-hate doesn't scream. It whispers, in apologies, in over-explaining, in perfectionism, in shrinking. Self-hate rarely begins in adulthood. It's learned, quietly, subtly, often before we even know who we are. If you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where being vulnerable got you met with silence, frustration, or shame, you probably learned something fast. My needs are a problem. Even if no one ever said those exact words, if you were only praised for accomplishments, or for being helpful, or for staying out of the way, you may have started to believe you were only valuable when you weren't inconvenient. Can you remember the first time you felt like being yourself was too much? We aren't born criticizing ourselves, but over time other voices become our own. Why are you crying again? You're so dramatic, you always mess things up. Eventually, you don't need anyone else to say it. You say it for them. You become your own bully, a full-time surveillance system. You don't just feel bad, you believe you deserve to. And in a twisted way, it feels safer, because now you're in control of the punishment. Most people don't even realize they hate themselves, because it doesn't always sound like I'm worthless. Sometimes it sounds like, I can't mess this up. I just want to be better. If I do everything right, they won't leave. Let's pause here for a second. If self-hate doesn't scream, how do you know it's even there? Shame is different from guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. And if you hear that long enough, especially as a child trying to make sense of the world, it stops feeling like a belief and starts feeling like who you are. You don't think, I failed this one time. You think, I am a failure. You might catch yourself saying things like, I ruin everything. People would be better off without me. I don't know what's wrong with me, but something definitely is. That's not just low self-esteem. That's self-hate. You can grow up in a home that seems loving and still learn to hate yourself. If your emotions were mocked, ignored, or treated like they were too much, your nervous system starts believing emotions equal danger. So what happens when you feel grief? Anger? Loneliness? You don't express it, you shut down. Or worse, you turn it inward. Sometimes that looks like self-blame. Other times it looks like perfectionism. Not because you want to impress people, but because being flawless feels like the only safe way to exist. Perfectionism isn't about impressing others, it's armor. It can feel like a personality trait, but it often masks emotional trauma. For some people, failure doesn't just feel bad, it feels existential. You might think, if I mess this up, I'll lose everything. If I'm not perfect, they'll leave. If I make a mistake, I'll never forgive myself. That's not ambition, that's fear, masquerading as drive. You weren't born hating yourself. Someone or something taught you how. But the good news, if it was learned, it can be unlearned. Let's get something clear. Self-harm isn't always about wanting to die. It's often about needing a break from your own mind. Self-harm isn't crazy. It's a survival response. When emotions become unbearable, when you're so numb you need to feel something, or so anxious you want to claw your way out of your body, or so angry you can't scream, can't cry. Self-harm brings clarity. The world slows down. The pain is sharp, but predictable. And that predictability becomes soothing. And soothing becomes addictive. Here's what neuroscience tells us. When you hurt yourself, your brain releases endorphins, natural painkillers. Your amygdala, the threat detection system, calms down. You get a little dopamine hit, relief, a sense of control. The brain learns that worked. And the more it works, the more your brain turns to it in crisis. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. This is why therapies like DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, focus so much on distress tolerance, not because your emotions are wrong, but because your tools were never safe. The worst part, after the relief, comes shame. You look at yourself and think, I'm disgusting, I'm broken, I can't even cope like a normal person. And that shame feeds the same pain that caused the harm in the first place. It's a loop, a trap, and it's reinforced every time. When we hear self-harm, we often picture something very specific, but it's not always what you think. It's not always a visible scar. Sometimes it's quiet, invisible, and it hides in things that even look like discipline or self-control. Have you ever found yourself picking at your skin until it bleeds, or skipping meals not to be healthy, but because a part of you feels like you don't deserve nourishment? Some people push their bodies at the gym until they nearly collapse, not because they love fitness, but because punishing their body feels familiar. Or maybe it's saying yes to people who treat you like garbage over and over again, because somewhere deep down, you think that's all you're worth. And sometimes, it's even more hidden than that, like quietly hoping you get sick enough that people will finally understand how much pain you're in. Self-harm isn't always sharp objects and obvious wounds. It can be routines, habits, even silence. It's anything that says, I deserve this. It's not the pain people become addicted to. It's the silence, the control, the calm after the chaos. If your brain learns survival through harm, it can learn safety through care. You don't need to have it all figured out to begin healing. You don't even need to understand exactly where it came from. But naming it out loud without shame is a powerful first step. Try saying things like, this doesn't feel good anymore. I don't want this to be my only coping tool. I don't know why I do this, but I want to learn. That honesty alone begins to interrupt the loop, because shame thrives in silence, but healing begins in naming. And when you're overwhelmed, your body doesn't need deep philosophy. It needs safety. Here are some grounding tools that actually help. Cold exposure. Hold an ice cube in your hand. Feel its sting. Splash cold water on your face. This shocks your system into the present moment and resets your nervous system. Tactile input. Grab something textured, a sponge, a rock, a hairbrush handle. Say out loud what it feels like. This is rough, this is real, I'm here. Movements, shake out your arms, stomp your feet, walk around the room. Your body needs a way to discharge what your voice can't say yet. Box breathing. This is a powerful way to signal safety to your body. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold your breath for 4. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 4. Then hold again for 4. That's 1 round. Try doing this for at least a minute. It helps slow your heart rate, regulate your nervous system, and interrupt the emotional spiral. Do it for a minute. Let your heart slow. Let your system know we're okay now. Touch points, put your hand over your chest or stomach and say, this is my body. I'm safe. I'm here. It might feel silly. Do it anyway. It grounds you in yourself. These aren't distractions, they're containers. You're not escaping the feeling, you're holding it safely. Self-compassion isn't just a buzzword. According to Dr. Kristin Neff, one of the leading researchers in this field, learning to treat yourself with compassion, not discipline, can reduce self-harming behaviors. Why? Because self-compassion improves emotional regulation. It reduces shame. And it breaks the cycle of self-punishment by replacing it with care. Just to be transparent, there's no definitive large-scale study proving it's the most effective approach for everyone. But growing research points in this direction. Healing through care tends to be deeper and longer-lasting than coping through willpower alone. You don't have to love yourself yet, but you can talk to yourself like someone you care about. Try, you're doing your best. This hurts because it matters. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. Even if you don't believe it yet, saying it makes space for it to become true. Build your emotional vocabulary. Words give shape to your pain. Without them, everything feels blurry and heavy. Try naming what you feel beyond bad or fine. Try hollow, powerless, ashamed, numb, lonely, unlovable. These emotions aren't signs of weakness. They're signals, your nervous system's way of saying something hurts here. Think of them as data. And with data, you can understand. You can respond. You can heal. If this video gave you words for something you've been carrying in silence, you're not alone. I make content like this because I needed someone to say it to me. If it helped you, hit subscribe for more no-pressure videos about healing, trauma, and self-trust. Let's rebuild, one breath at a time. You weren't meant to spend your life punishing yourself. You don't have to be healed to begin healing. You don't have to be confident to take a step. You just have to be willing to try. And if you're still here, still listening, still breathing, that means a part of you is reaching for something softer. Hold on to that. It's not weakness. It's the beginning of something strong.